Hello everyone, Just Podcast TV is here. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified on new contents.
Episode 177. A Wonderful Dinner Party. Wallace had no reason to refuse. If he lost, he just had to invite some people to one of his games. He did that all the time and it didn't cost him a single cent. Okay, he said. True, James's offer to only use 2 fingers did seem kind of insulting. But who would turn down a chance to win $100 million? Whoa, are you really going to do this? Elliot didn't seem to like the idea. James had shown extraordinary strength and defeated 3 other NBA players, but even Elliot could tell that Wallace was definitely the most powerful of the 4 of them. And James was going to be only using 2 fingers? With that much on the line? Elliot was not a person who lacked money, but he hated the thought of throwing money away. Don't worry, I know what to do. James patted Elliot's shoulder. Mr. Klein, don't worry, said Krista. He saw that Vanessa and Katie also looked calm. It was as if they had seen all of this before. Elliot had nothing else to say. He could only stand to the side with a worried expression. Brock acted as the referee of their arm wrestling competition. When both men were ready, he shouted, "Begin!" The 2 of them started to exert their strength and their respective supporters started to cheer. At first, the 2 of them were in a deadlock. For a moment, they did not move at all. This scene completely stunned everyone, except Krista, Katie, and Vanessa, of course. They sat as still as statues. James was also surprised. First of all, Wallace's hands were huge, totally engulfing his fingers. Second, his strength was really terrifying. If James were using his entire palm, Wallace would be able to withstand his 5th level of strength. However, in Wallace's heart, there was a storm. This ordinary-looking man's power was terrifying. He, the so-called human tank, was actually going all out now, but he discovered that he couldn't make headway against James's 2 fingers. What kind of freak was this guy to possess such strength? He didn't look like a bodybuilder or anything. It didn't make sense. Seeing that James hadn't won immediately, Elliot quickly began to cheer for him. On the other hand, the 3 beauties had calm expressions on their faces. In their eyes, James was already a godlike man. It seemed there was nothing in this world that he could not do. James taunted his opponent. "Hey Gabe, if you don't use more strength, I'm going to win." Wallace's face was red. He had already used all his strength. He was in a desperate state. And James could speak so calmly. Could it be that he hadn't even used all his power? Wallace couldn't even respond. He was concentrating too hard. In the end, he could only watch helplessly as his hand was pressed down, bit by bit. He had lost. Wallace shook out his wrist. Then he said, "I have to say, I'm in awe." Thank you, said James. "This is my number. Give me a call the next time you're in LA. You'll be my guest at a game." After Wallace said that, he handed a gold-plated business card to James. The 2 men embraced. Elliot, standing off to the side, was stunned by James's ability. Brock said, "James, I think that with your strength, you could probably participate in the Fist of Steel boxing competition. Really? It's going on right now in Paris. Want to give it a try?" As soon as he said that, everyone agreed with him. They thought James should go for it. Vanessa was the first to show her enthusiasm. Good, she said. "Show them what you're made of." However, James shook his head and said, "It's not worth showing off. Forget it." He wanted to keep his skills a secret after all. Just then, Bailey came in to inform them that dinner was ready. Everyone went to the banquet set in the palace's formal garden. Now that they all felt like good friends, it was a wonderful banquet and an unforgettable night. Episode 178, Insta-Kill. After dinner, James sent the others away so he could talk with Elliot in the garden of the royal family. He hadn't been so happy in a really long time, and the fact that he had run into his old friend here was the icing on the cake. Elliot was curious about James's exploits of the past year. He kept asking questions, but James was evasive, wanting to keep his secrets. It was not until late that they returned to their rooms to rest. Although it was very late, Elliot was still so excited that he could not sleep. He had been to Paris many times over the years, but he had never stayed in any of the five-star hotels. Now here he was, spending the night at a palace. For the next few days, Elliot put his business on hold. He accompanied James to all the major scenic spots in Paris. Edie, on the other hand, had been performing at model shows one after another. She already had endorsements from over a dozen top fashion brands. She had risen to fame overnight. What was more, she and Vanessa had become good friends. Every time Edie went to a show, Vanessa and the other women would accompany her. This left James to see the sights with Elliot. A few days later, Paris Fashion Week came to an end. James had invited Elliot to visit the winery in Bordeaux for a few days. The yacht was there and he wanted to take it to England, so it made sense to go back. However, just as they were about to leave, Elliot received a phone call from a business partner. This partner was supposed to sign a contract agreeing to purchase goods from him, but was calling to tell Elliot he had changed his mind. The Silver Bell Corporation would lose at least $300 million. The money didn't mean that much to Elliot, but he was furious that the man had gone back on his word. Elliot decided to go confront the man directly at his company's headquarters. Of course, James immediately offered to go with him. This company was called the Seine Company, and its headquarters was near the Champ de Mars in Paris. Soon, James and Elliot arrived. This company was not small. It took up the whole building, which had more than 30 floors. As Elliot and James rushed over, Elliot dialed several people who were in charge of handling the company's business. However, he just got transferred to voicemail. "Shoot!" Elliot clenched his fist angrily. He had no one to unload on. "Come on, let's go in and find them." He walked straight to the main door. Elliot was usually a mild-mannered guy, but this was too much. James nodded in agreement. As someone who had dared to enter a pirate's lair, he did not know what it meant to be afraid. He followed Elliot without saying a word. He would back Elliot through thick and thin. However, as soon as they reached the door, they were blocked by the security personnel of the Seine Company. "What are you doing?" one of the guards demanded. "I am Elliot Klein from the Silver Bell Corporation in New York. I need to see Mr. Paul." Although Elliot was furious, he was still a cultured person. He patiently explained his business to the security guard at the door. However, Elliot's patient explanation did not win the respect of the security guard, whose expression hardened. "Forget it. Mr. Paul is not available. You'd better leave." James figured this guy Paul, whoever he was, had told the guards to turn Elliot away. He entered the fray and shouted at the security personnel, "Get out of my way." The two security guards were pretty big. When they saw James, this modestly built man, daring to shout at them like that, they didn't hesitate to approach him. However, James didn't say anything. In less than a second, he knocked the two of them to the ground. It wasn't until they were pressed to the ground that they realized what had happened. It turned out that this light man was actually very powerful. He possessed such strength that he would be able to kill them in an instant. At that moment, another security guard in the distance saw what was happening and shouted in the intercom that someone was causing trouble at the main entrance. A large group of people rushed over. They were all big and sturdy. It was obvious that they were skilled fighters. Seeing a large group of people rushing over like a tide, Elliot immediately became somewhat flustered. Nothing like this had ever happened to him. However, James did not care at all. To him, these people were nothing. James turned to Elliot and said, "Step back." He picked up the walkie-talkie from one of the security guards on the ground and shouted into it, "Anyone else? Hurry up and come over. I'll be waiting for you at the main entrance." This scene infuriated the security guards. Who did this guy think he was? They rushed over and started fighting James without hesitation. However, how could they withstand James's tremendous power? He raised his fist and punched a tall security guard at the front of the charge. Before that guy could understand what was going on, his body suddenly became light and was sent flying. The next two were also sent flying. This time, James was really angry. He didn't stop. he threw a flurry of punches. Those strong security guards were all sent flying like human sandbags. In just 20 seconds, James had finished schooling all the security guards. They were lying in front of the Sen Company's main entrance, powerless to fight back. Some of the security guards didn't even have time to react before they felt their bodies lighten and they went sailing through the air. After giving the order, James dusted his hands together in a relaxed manner. He turned around and said to Elliot, who also hadn't reacted yet, "Let's go, pal." "Oh, right." Elliot finally reacted. He jumped away from the men on the ground and walked into the company's main door side by side with James. No one dared to step forward to stop James. He and his friend walked all the way to the lobby without any obstructions. Elliot had been here before. He knew that Paul was on the 30th floor, so he walked straight to the elevator and pressed the button. Soon they reached the 30th floor. Elliot knocked on the door of Paul's office, but there was no response. Elliot was about to push the door open and enter, but James grabbed his hand and pulled him back. Elliot asked curiously, "What's wrong?" However, James didn't say anything. He just signaled for silence. He pricked up his ears and listened carefully. He felt that something was wrong here. He couldn't tell precisely what. It was a strong gut feeling. This was one of his special abilities. It allowed him to foresee danger. James's hearing had long surpassed that of ordinary people. He realized he could hear two people breathing in Paul's office. One was breathing fast, as if afraid. As for the other breath, it was extremely stable. Moreover, this second breath was very close to the door. From his experience, James instantly determined that the person close behind the door was most likely an assassin. At this moment, the other person in the office was being threatened by this guy. Interesting. James suddenly smiled, not caring if he gave himself away. Then he signaled to Elliot to retreat. After that, he grinned and said, "Friend behind the door, don't be nervous. We're here for Paul, not you. As the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We're on the same side here. I don't think you need to fight with us." As soon as James' voice faded, he instinctively took a step to the side. In the next moment, the door to the office was opened. A man in a suit and dress shoes walked out. He looked quite handsome. However, he was holding a grenade in his right hand and a pistol in his left. Seeing this scene, Elliot jumped. "Oh my God!" It was obvious that the opponent was an assassin. However, James acted as if he were meeting an old friend. He grinned and said, "What do we have here? I didn't expect you."
"Sir, why are you here?"
To Elliot's amazement, the killer addressed James respectfully. That's right, this was none other than legendary assassin Dax Freeman, who James had defeated in Africa. Elliot was completely stunned. He had never expected to see an assassin here, and how on earth did James know him? For that matter, why was the assassin deferring to him? This was simply unbelievable. "I could ask the same question," James told Dax Freeman. He suspected the assassin had been hired to do something to Paul. "As for me, I happened to be here in Paris, so I came along with my friend on a business matter."
"What's your beef with this guy?"
Freeman asked. However, James did not answer him. He said, "Let's go in first. If we just stand here and talk, I'm afraid that we'll attract unnecessary trouble very soon." Only then did Freeman realize he was still holding a grenade. He immediately nodded and said, "Oh, right." The two of them walked into the office together.